समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् ॐ. Reading of Param Poojya Guruji Swami Tejomayanandaji's book Hindu Culture, an introduction, chapter 13, page number 130. After the point, the householder's life. Another instruction given to the householder concerns food. Do not censure food, do not waste food, grow more food. Food also represents wealth and prosperity. It means that material prosperity or resources earned should neither be deemed, criticized nor wasted, but should be increased and shared with others. They should not be used for that one household alone. In the Taittiriya Upanishad 3.10.1, it is said, "Do not turn away anybody who seeks shelter and lodging." This is the vow. Let one therefore acquire much food by any righteous means whatsoever. One should say food is ready. If the food is prepared, given to others in the best manner, the food is given to him, the host, also in the best manner. If the food is prepared, given to others in a mediocre manner, food is also given to him, the host, in the mediocre manner. If the food is prepared, given to others in the lowest manner, the same food is also given to him, the host, in the lowest manner. He who knows thus will obtain all the rewards as mentioned above. Here it is said that when a guest comes to the house, he should not be refused, but we should offer him a comfortable seat and offer food with respect. The Upanishad also tells us that when we give food to a guest with respect, we will likewise be given things with respect. But if we give food to someone in an insulting or casual way, the same will be returned to us. It is also the duty of the householders to take care of the brahmacharis and sannyasis. In fact, the Manusmriti clearly says that among the 4 ashrams, the householder's life is supreme, because all the other 3 depends on the householder to take care of and maintain them. When these instructions are taken into consideration, the householder's life becomes more meaningful. Also, the householder must not become drowned in socializing and social life. He should seek the company of holy people, satsangas, and also prepare his mind for the next stage of life. The purpose of the householder's life, therefore, is not to get stuck in the house and hold on to the house, but to slowly outgrow its limitations and expand his vision with higher knowledge. He should aim to become one with the universe. As we have seen, the householder's duties are manifold. If one keeps these essential principles in mind, one's specific duties will also become evident. It is not enough that the parents produce children, praja. Their responsibility extends to making sure that their children are supraja, noble children. More time must be given to this aspect. Generally, the householder's time is spent in earning money, but it is much more important to become a noble person than to only make money. For a noble person will bring all kinds of prosperity, material and spiritual, to himself, his family, and to the society. By serving relatives and those in the other three ashrams, the householder must expand his or her vision of family to the society, nation, and world, thereby rising above ego and selfish interests. The retired life. Having prepared ourselves for life with the knowledge gained as a student and having tested that knowledge and allowed it to mature within us through the householder's life of duties. We next enter the Vanaprastha stage of life or the retired life. In this ashram, one gradually withdraws from hectic worldly activities and devotes more time to spirituality. In earlier times, the husband would leave the home and go to the forest with or without his wife, depending on whether she was ready to accompany him. Ramcharitmanas by Saint Tulsidas says that Manu once told his wife Sutarupa, "Now I am retiring to the forest." But she was one step ahead of him and replied, "I have been waiting for this day, wondering why you had not left earlier. I am going with you." Together they went to the forest for contemplation. It is said that the two never interfered any longer in household affairs and gave advice to the children only if they came and asked for it. As Vanaprasthas, the husband and wife do not have the same relationship as before. They relate to each other only as seekers of truth or as friends on the spiritual journey. In this way, more time can be spent in spiritual practices in preparation for sannyas, the renunciate's life. The final stage is the sannyas ashram, the life of renunciation. But the important question is, what should one renounce? When a person is initiated into sannyas, a ritualistic fire sacrifice called Viraja home is done. The most significant part of this home is the point at which the initiates repeat aloud Sanyastomaya, 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 meaning I have renounced, I have renounced, I have renounced. The triple repetition can represent a number of things, that I have no more identifications with my gross body, subtle body, mind, and intellect, or with my causal body, the unmanifest vasanas, or I have renounced my identification with the waking, dream, and deep sleep states. It can also mean that I no longer have any desires for things in this world, in the lower worlds, and in the heavenly worlds. I renounce desires for progeny, for money, or for name and fame. In short, I renounce everything. But what is the essence of sannyas? It is the total renunciation of desire and all limitation or finitude. Whenever we use the word renounce, we generally associate some kind of pain with it. We ask the sannyasi with surprise, "Have you really left your house?" But the sannyasi answers, "No, I have only left this one little house so that I can embrace the world. Instead of calling this one place my home, I now call the whole world my home. In fact, The world is me, myself. To see the world as one's own self is true sannyas. The life of renunciation also results in fearlessness, abhayatva. Society fears an ordinary person who is full of desires because there is always a possibility that he may compete with and usurp another person's fame, power, position, or wealth. But the sannyasi who has no worldly desires can honestly say to society, now you need not afraid now you need not be afraid of me. I do not want your position or your possessions. He also is no longer afraid of society, the world, or even of death. A sannyasi's life is meant wholly for seeking truth. It is for serving others and not for receiving services from others. The sannyasa ashram is essentially the giving up of all I-ness and myness. It is for the realization of the self. The normal order in which one proceeds through the stages of life are from brahmacharya to grahastha to vanaprastha to sannyas ashram. However, our scriptures say that if there is a person who, even at the student stage of life, has extreme dispassion and desire for knowledge alone, whether boy or girl, that person can go directly to the sannyas ashram without having to pass through the other stages. A famous statement in the Upanishad declares, the very day that you develop this passion, leave the house. If a person is unmarried and wants to take sannyas, he must ask permission from his parents. If married, one must ask permission from one's spouse. In extreme cases, however, when the dispassion is very strong, it will not be considered wrong if one renounces even without permission, provided it is out of a desire for knowledge alone. Chapter 14, the four castes, Chaturvarna. The next topic to be discussed in the Varna Dharma and the duties prescribed for each caste. The word caste is a problem for many people today because over time the whole idea has come to be entirely misunderstood. We will hereafter call it the Varna system as per its original name. In Sanskrit, Varna means to describe or that by which a thing is described. Varna can also mean name, color, form, quality, relationship, and so on, because one describes a thing according to these attributes. In botany or zoology, for instance, the entire vegetable and animal kingdoms are classified according to similar qualities and attributes. The same is true in other material sciences such as physics and chemistry, where elements and minerals are similar properties. Elements and minerals of similar properties are grouped together. Among human beings, there is also much variety in color, shape, ability, mental temperament, and so on. When we say that all human beings are equal, we know this to be true from the spiritual standpoint. Each one has capacity to do something, whatever it may be. Each one has a particular ability. By nature, one person does physical labor, another writes poetry or is a good public speaker, and yet another does social work. Thus, just as objects and beings are classified in other sciences according to their natures and properties, spiritual science also classifies people into the four groups, the Chaturvarna. These four categories of people are found everywhere in the world, not just in India. In this regard, Lord Krishna makes a famous statement in the Bhagavad Gita 4.13, which says, "The fourfold Varna has been created by me according to the differentiation of guna, quality, and karma, action or profession." There must always be a basis for classifications. For example, countries of the world are classified as third world countries, developed nations, or underdeveloped nations. So, what is the standard of measurement here? From what standpoint is one country considered developed or underdeveloped? Because if we look from a spiritual standpoint, those that are considered materially underdeveloped might be well developed spiritually. The Chaturvarna is classification based on guna and karma. This could be broadly translated as qualities and work or profession. Varna based on karma. Brahmanas, the thinking class. With respect to karma, a Brahman means one with the ability to study, research, invent, discover, teach, and do such other work that requires much thought. Everyone is not able to do this. We see that the number of dropouts from schools and colleges is increasing. The same is true in the spiritual field. For example, for the 2 year Vedanta course at Sandipani, Mumbai, we receive about 500 applications. 200 of those applications appear for the interview. Out of those 200, about 80 are selected. Of those 80, only about 40 students actually join the course, and after joining, the teacher is lucky if she or he is left with 20 students by the end of the 2 year program. When those 20 are asked at the conclusion, "Now, how many of you are ready to serve the society?" Maybe 12 or 15 students choose to serve and propagate this knowledge. This does not mean, of course, that those who drop out are useless or inferior. It only means that their capacities are better used in other fields or occupations. From Vedic times onwards, those who were of an intellectual nature, capable of studying and teaching, were called Brahmanas, the thinking class. Many organizations have an advisory board, a think tank of thinkers to create new ideas and make decisions. Second, Kshatriyas, the leader class. The second category, the Kshatriyas, are capable of leading the society towards the ideals shown by the Brahmanas of looking after the people and of courageously fighting battles when necessary. Though the thinker has visions or ideals for society, he does not always have the capacity to execute them in a practical way. Hence, the Kshatriya is needed, as this type of person can act on the ideas. The Kshatriyas are the natural born leaders of society. Vaishyas, the business class. The third category, that of the Vaishyas, have a propensity to produce resources not only for themselves but for society at large. These people are engaged in agriculture, cattle raising, trading, and other businesses. We all know that not everybody has this business acumen and know how. Shudras, the labor class. The fourth category is made up of those who perform service seva. They are not capable of thinking of ideas, leading the society, or producing much wealth. But when they are told what needs to be done, they will do it. Therefore, in any organization, there are people who give suggestions and make plans, others who put the plans into action, others who do the fundraising, and still others who do whatever labor needs to be done. The main point is that everybody is capable of doing one thing or another, and no category is in any way inferior to other. In fact, when you understand the real meaning of the four varnas, you will see that each of us, to a greater or lesser degree, is a Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, all put together in one. Personally, I find this true. In one field, I am able to have an idea or vision, but I am not able to do anything practically. Whereas in another field, I am able to work but do not have creative ideas. Really speaking, all four types are necessary for success in our individual lives, in the family, in social activities, in any organization, or in a nation. Yet a person is called a Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, depending on whether his or her nature is predominantly that of a thinker, leader, business person, or worker. Varna based on Guna. As Lord Krishna explained in the Bhagavad Gita, the classification of Varnas is also based on one's inner mental qualities or gunas. It is said that the world and human nature is composed of three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva guna is of the nature of knowledge. It includes the qualities of love, faith, kindness, thirst for knowledge, and compassion. Rajoguna is of the nature of activity. Numerous desires and ambitions for name, fame, pleasure, and power are its manifestations. Tamas is of the nature of inertia, and it manifests as dullness and little interest or ambition of any kind. A Brahman is described as one who is predominantly sattvic, with some rajas and a little tamas in his personality. A Kshatriya is one who is predominantly rajasic, with a very ambitious person, with some sattva and a little tamas in him. A Vaishya is one in whom the guna of rajas is predominant, yet with lesser tamas and the least amount of sattva guna. The Shudra is predominantly tamasic, with some rajas and very little sattva. In conclusion, we have seen that the division of the Varna is based on action, karma, and quality guna, not on birth, janma, as is commonly understood today. In fact, the Manusmriti says that everyone is actually born as a Shudra, Janmana Jayate Shudraha, because at birth we are basically the raw material of life from which anything can be made. We cannot always judge what a person will be by what varna he is born into. For a Brahman can become a Shudra and a Shudra can become a Brahman in his profession and qualities. Some people live an inspired life in their youth but later on become dull or debased, while others begin life by being dull but become very bright and successful later on. How then did this notion of categorizing by birth came about? It started when people with Brahmana qualities, for instance, began to marry only those people with similar qualities. Children born into such a family were then called Brahmanas. However, this was not the original intent nor the basis upon which the Varnas were actually divided. It is said in the Chanakya Sutra, A person should be good only in a field of activity, engaged only in a field of activity that he is capable of doing. When this principle is followed, there is no problem. Furthermore, if everyone has the attitude that I am capable of doing this particular work and I should do it to serve the society, then naturally there will be dharma, the total integration of society as well as of the individual. If we do not have this understanding, disintegration will result. Devotion to one's duty. As explained earlier, dharma is that which integrates the individual as well as society. Following it enables one to ultimately reach the supreme dharma, abundance in the absolute nature of the self. Whether one is capable of thinking and planning or leading, creating wealth or doing manual labor. Dharma is fulfilled when people of all four varnas perform their duties with a sense of responsibility and with an attitude of selflessness. In the field of education, for instance, if the students are sincerely interested in their studies, if the teachers are devoted to teaching, and if the administration is devoted to managing the institution well, the school will run smoothly. At home, if the parents, grandparents, and children all fulfill their duties devotedly, there will be order, warmth, and peace in the house. But if everyone argues and wants to give up their own duty, saying, why do I have to do this? Why do you not do it? There will always be friction. Disharmony comes about when we avoid or are careless and forgetful of our duties. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, remaining engaged in one's own duty, one attains perfection. 18.45. Devotion to duty makes the mind pure, and purity brings about inner perfection and complete self unfoldment. A doctor does not have to do the work of a lawyer, and a lawyer does not have to do the work of an engineer. Each one should remain devoted to their work chosen according to what they are capable of. Perfection in any field, success, or even national or international fame is attainable when we devotedly work in our special field of interest and talent. Dedicated action. With what attitude should we perform our work? The Lord tells us in the Gita 18.46. He from whom all beings have evolved, by whom all this world is pervaded, worshipping him with one's own actions, one attains perfection. Whatever work we do should be looked upon as duty and should be done as worship of the Lord in an attitude of dedication and surrender. Which Lord should uh, which Lord should we worship? We should worship that Supreme Lord from whom this entire world has emerged and by whom this entire world is pervaded. Work done with this attitude of worship of the infinite Lord is called true dedicated action or karma yoga. To understand how dedicated action integrates society, let us take an example of how a good cup of coffee is made. First, we must have the four ingredients: water, coffee powder, milk, and sugar. The nature of the water is not that of the powder. The nature of the powder is not the same as the sugar. Each ingredient has its own special quality. We cannot say that one ingredient is more important than the other. Here there is no question of superiority or inferiority. But when all four ingredients are mixed together in right proportion and each ingredient surrenders or offers its quality for the sake of the whole, then that coffee is wonderful. Imagine if the coffee powder says, I am the costliest, why should I surrender my taste? The resultant liquid will not be coffee at all. Society is something like the cup of coffee. It is made up of its four ingredients, the four varnas, and each one has its own nature, its own special contribution to make to the whole. None is superior to the other. If each individual becomes dedicated and offers his or her own best qualities in serving others, the result will be a better society. Problems in society arise only when we assume a mistaken sense of superiority or inferiority. Though in India they say problems are because of the Varna system, we find that the same kind of notions exist almost everywhere in communist, capitalist, and socialist countries, even if they are not called Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and so on. If it is not a problem of Varna, it may be due to racial discrimination or something else. When individuals or racial groups think themselves superior to others, they will want to exercise authority over others. This may continue for some time, but how long will the oppressed remain suppressed and controlled? Sooner or later, they will revolt and a struggle of some kind will ensue, sometimes even leading to a war. To war. Remember, it is not that something is necessarily wrong with the social or political system. The system can only work properly when all its components work in harmony and with dedication. The present degraded condition of India and everywhere else in the world is due only to humanity's greed, selfishness, pride, arrogance, and other such negative qualities. In summary, Varna and Ashram Dharma is the fulfillment of our duties given to us according to our station or stage in life, ashram, and according to our inherent aptitude, Varna, performed in an attitude of worship and offered to the Lord for the benefit of the entire society. This topic could be discussed in more detail, however, each person can learn much from the above and reflect upon it more deeply. Chapter 15, the purpose of religious festivals. Our next topic of discussion is India's religious festivals. What is the need for them? How are they celebrated? What is their significance? And how can we make the best use of these occasions? Let us first analyze why there is a need for these religious festivals. As we work every day from morning until evening, we become tired and naturally need to rest. We go home, eat and sleep, and we feel revitalized and are ready to work again the next morning. However, as our life continues between work and rest, day after day, a kind of monotony sets in. We feel bored and feel the need for a change. Although our physical body is revived by sleeping, how do we get rid of this boredom and this mental exhaustion? What we generally do is to look for some kind of entertainment. The Sanskrit word for entertainment, manoranjan, means delighting the mind, entertaining the mind. Some people sit and watch television for entertainment, others play cards, go on picnics, or take up a hobby. Everyone looks forward to their weekends so that they can do something that is fun and relaxing, a relief from the pressure and monotony of work. Yet, after a while, even these weekends become routine and we want to go on vacation to Lake Tahoe, Disney World, or Las Vegas. When even these places become dull for us, we want to go to other exotic countries, far away or someplace totally different. Thus, our vacations and amusements are meant to remove our boredom and give us a sense of mental rest and relaxation, at least for some time. Recognizing this need for change and entertainment, the Hindu Dharma provides special occasions, festivals of a religious nature called Utsavas. No religion will last very long if it does not understand the common needs and desires of people. It will be cruel if it insists only on strict discipline at all times. Aside from fasting, there must also be feasting, singing, dancing, and joyous celebration. One may ask that if the purpose of these festivals is to remove our mental and physical exhaustion, then why are our vacations and weekends not sufficient? Why do we need religious festivals that many times involve rituals? The answer is clear. Though these various amusements relax the mind and revive us for a while, they themselves become monotonous ritual after some time, leaving us with a peculiar feeling of incompleteness afterwards. Afterwards, although the purpose of vacations is to help us feel rested, to gain more enthusiasm, cheerfulness, and energy for our regular work, we generally find that the opposite is true. When the vacations are over, we think, oh, now I have to go back to the office. What a bore. Often we are left exhausted physically and broke financially. Our pockets are emptied and we have to work hard again to re earn. The pleasure of the vacations has its effect, not removed the pressure as its effect. In effect, not removed the pressure and it may have added a new one. Why did the vacation not give us the desired result? Because it is entertainment for the sake of entertainment. On the other hand, religious festivals have a very different effect. They not only provide us the occasion for merrymaking, but they also give us a noble divine vision and inspire us to raise our mind to higher levels. Not only do they revive us physically and mentally, they also purify the mind and prepare us to face life with more enthusiasm, to live life more happily and fully. If we observe these festivals closely, we will see that they not only point out the ultimate goal of life but also give us the guidelines to reach that goal. In short, our religious festivals serve the purpose of entertainment and at the same time give us much more. Variety of festivals. Hindu religious festivals can be classified into different groups. Some celebrate the birth of great incarnations of the Lord, such as Sri Ram, Ramanavami, and Sri Krishna, Krishna Janmashtami. Similar festivals celebrate the life and work of divine masters, Guru Purnima. Other festivals relate to the change of seasons. For example, Makara Sankranti is celebrated in January. It is the time when the sun changes its course and begins moving northward again. Vasanta Panchami, Vasanta is spring, marks the beginning of the spring season. By celebrating these seasonal festivals, we are made more aware of the changes in nature. The dominant idea behind these festivals is that we should live more in harmony with the nature instead of trying to exploit it and destroy it. Holi, the festival of colors, is another great seasonal festival celebrated especially in North India. At this time, everybody splashes colored water or powder all over each other, on faces, clothes, everything. It is wonderful because it reflects exactly what is occurring in nature at that time. In spring, the flowers of different colors are all blossoming. By celebrating this event, we feel a greater oneness with nature. This splashing of colors was also a famous sport in Lord Sri Krishna's life. Other festivals such as Onam in Kerala or Baisakhi celebrate the harvest time, a time of plenty signifying both material and spiritual prosperity. Navaratri, the festival of 9 nights, and Diwali, the festival of lights, celebrate the victory of good over evil. In addition, we also have national festivals such as Independence Day and festivals associated with great national heroes who led very inspiring lives. Gandhi Jayanti. Though these festivals are not religious in nature, still they set before us a higher goal and encourage us to work hard in that direction. Finally, there are the spiritual festivals like Shivaratri. I will now explain some important aspects that are similar in the festivals of Sri Ram Navami, Sri Krishna Janmashtami, and Mahashivratri. Sri Ramnavami generally comes towards the end of March or beginning of April and is celebrated at noon long ago when the wicked King Ravan ruled the Lanka. The good people were being persecuted by him and unrighteousness prevailed. The suffering people prayed to God for help. Soon he incarnated on earth as the Prince of Ayodhya to destroy the evildoers and to establish the kingdom of righteousness. This incarnation avatar is of Sri Ram. Sri Krishna Janmashtami comes in late August or early September and celebrates the midnight birth of Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna also incarnated for the purpose of destroying evil and restoring righteousness on earth. The festival of Mahashivratri celebrates the appearance of Lord Shiva at midnight in the form of a column of light Jyoti. The point to be noted in the celebration of these festivals is the sequence, the preparation before the appearance of the Lord, the Lord's actual appearance or incarnation, and the final joyous celebration after his arrival. Each of these phases is of deep spiritual significance. Preparation. Before the Lord's appearance, people generally observe a fast as a way of preparing for the Lord's coming. This fast has two aspects. One is the withdrawal from indulgence in sensual pleasures. Fasting means not just abstinence from food, but from sense pleasure of all kinds, for we are constantly eating through all our sense organs. We eat, see forms and colors through our eyes, sounds through our ears, fragrances through our nose, and so on. When we perceive all these sense objects through their respective sense organs, what we are actually feeding is the mind. The mind grows or breeds on these sense perceptions and thereafter runs constantly outward in their pursuit and becomes totally dissipated. True fasting, therefore, is to have control over the sense organs and to cease from indulgence in sense pleasures. The second important aspect in the observance of a fast is constant remembrance of the Lord by chanting the name of the Lord, thinking of Him, worship, meditation, or prayer. The Sanskrit word for fasting, upavasa, comes from upa means near and vasa means to live. Thus, fasting means to sit near the Lord mentally. For this reason, devotees will often do their japa, repetition of the Lord's name, and puja, worship, while sitting near a picture or image of the Lord with a lamp burning in front of it. The purpose is to purify the mind and to be ardently praying to Him, O Lord, please manifest Thyself in my heart. Manifestation. The manifestation of the Lord takes place in two ways. Objectively, Sri Ram actually did incarnate in the city of Ayodhya and lived an exemplary life in order to teach everyone the way of living according to Dharma. This is one aspect of the manifestation that we celebrate. The other is the subjective manifestation that occurs when the mind and intellect are totally integrated and perfectly tuned with the divine. Generally, our mind is constantly wandering in different directions and towards different objects. Thoughts are constantly rising. Therefore, the substratum of all thoughts is not recognized by us. But when the mind is withdrawn from all objects and made single pointed through meditation, there comes a point when the last thought has ended and no new thought has risen. At this juncture, the mind is thoughtless or objectless and is called Nirvishaya Mana. In this objectless mind, the Supreme Self is realized in its true nature. This realization is called the incarnation of the Supreme Lord in the heart. This is in fact the significance of the timing of many incarnations of the Lord. Sri Ramachandra incarnated at midday. At noon, the morning has ended and the sun is on its downward journey. At midnight, when Lord Krishna incarnated, the Lord and Lord Shiva manifested, one day was over, the next day had not yet begun. This juncture or midpoint between two periods of time is called Sandhi Kala, and it represents this objectless state of mind when realization of the pure Supreme Self takes place within us. Celebration. During their lifetime, both Sri Ram and Sri Krishna destroyed evildoers and re established the kingdom of righteousness and happiness in the world. In the same way, when realization takes place within, one recognizes one's own true self. All ignorance and ignorance created delusions, all negative tendencies of the mind get totally destroyed. Thereafter, one lives ever in the experience of the blissful self. the kingdom of joy. This joy of realization is represented externally in the festival by the lighting of lamps everywhere, by singing and dancing, and by distribution of sweets. These three phases of the religious festival associated with incarnations, preparation, incarnation, and celebration represent the three phases of spiritual progress. Our preparation consists of first purifying the mind by withdrawing it from sense objects, then making it single pointed by turning it towards the Lord in japa and meditation. When the mind is fully prepared and all thoughts have ended, the self, which is of the nature of pure consciousness, is recognized. When the ego is completely destroyed, life is forever a joyous celebration in the bliss of self. Shivaratri. The great festival of Mahashivratri, which we generally celebrate in the month of February, follows this same three-phase sequence. On Shivaratri day, devotees fast completely and hold on the one thought of the Lord by chanting continuously Om Namah Shivaya, meaning salutations to Lord Shiva. The mind is in single pointed concentration until the stroke of midnight. Then the Lord Shiva manifests as the light of consciousness within. As explained in the context of the Navaratri festival, the celebration at night signifies our waking up from the deep sleep of ignorance into the state of absolute knowledge. At the present moment, we know only two states: the mind when it is a world outside through the five sense organs. The mind in sleep, deep sleep, is in a state of total ignorance, completely unaware of the world. We do not yet know that state wherein the mind is withdrawn from the world, yet fully awake to the truth. This is why on Shivaratri one is supposed to stay awake all night in order to practice the simultaneous withdrawal of the mind from the objects as we do in sleep, and yet keep the mind in a state of awareness. In this state of objectless awareness comes the moment of spiritual awakening, the true Shivaratri. Part 4. The Epics. Scriptures provide the science of life and the art of living. Param Poojya Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda ji said, the Ramayana supplied the rich melody that modulated the heart and modulated the muscles of the Indian culture. Modulated the heart and molded the muscles of the Indian culture. Spiritual glory, mystical quiet, moral splendor, and the physical valor are the essentials of Hindu life. All these were at once generated, nourished, and kept blazing in the Indian character through the constant study of this famous epic. Even now it can repeat its magic. Rama, the perfect ideal, is made to play his life on a stage as filthy as the world, that is the common lot of all of us. Crisscrossing through this great drama are the tensions of passions, emotions, jealousies, pride, lust, greed, the madness of power, the hunger for wealth, the thirst for pleasure, and the delusions of attachments. There are the tender narrations of innocent childhood, heroic descriptions of irrepressible youth, and learned discourses upon the wisdom of old age. In short, the Ramayana is a picture gallery where each picture is perfect and yet the entire gallery is confusing with its own variegated colors and rich profusion, just like the picture of the world around us. In and through them all, Sri Ram stands out, bearing his righteous bow, even in the defense of honor and truth, of justice and peace. He also has a dash of frailties which make him truly human, and yet in his divine glories he stands out distinctly, a colossus of beauty, a mighty titan of strength, and a soaring peak of Olympus. Chapter 15. Itihasa and Puranas. We will now discuss the two categories of spiritual literature called Itihasa and Purana, commonly translated as history and mythology, respectively. The themes of Dharma and Brahma Vidya dealt with in the Vedas and Smritis are elaborated upon in these two types of scriptural literature. Itihasa. The literal meaning of Itihasa is iti asa, thus it was. Thus we have heard by tradition. These historical events took place in the distant past, and because we have not seen them ourselves, we know them only by what has been reported to us by others. Hasa also means laughter, and iti also means death or end. Who has the last laugh in this world? Death. Though we may think we have fooled death and avoided it for some time, death always wins in the end. Another beautiful meaning of history is his story, the Lord's story. Human beings are all really forms of God alone, and ultimately all is nothing but the play of the Lord. Therefore, when we study history, our ancient Itihas literature, it was not for the purpose of merely learning dates, times, places, and events. In themselves, they may not be of much use or interest, but through history, we were meant to discover what the ultimate truth is. In Hindu Dharma, the two famous books of Itihasa are the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. They reveal the lessons of history of humanity as a whole and not about particular time period alone. Therefore, if you read these two epics, you will know about world wars and every other war because it is actually the same story being repeated over and over again throughout history in different places at different times. The Ramayana, though it is not possible here to relate in detail the story of the Ramayana, I will touch upon certain important points. The literal meaning of Ramayana is the life story of Rama. Sri Rama was the prince of Ayodhya, the son of King Dasharath, who was ruling the kingdom at that time. King Dasharath had three wives to whom were born four sons. Sri Ram was born to Queen Kausalya, Bharata to Queen Kaikeyi, and Lakshman and Shatrughna to Queen Sumitra. Ramayana is the story of a great noble prince Sri Ram, who was an ideal son, brother, disciple, husband, and king. Generally, we find that a person is perfect in only one or maybe two roles or relationships or fields of activity in life. One may be an ideal husband but not such an ideal son. Another may be an ideal son but not a great husband, or maybe an uncaring father. To find someone who is ideal in all of their relationships, perfect in all fields of activity, and who is full and has all the virtues is impossible. Yet we find that Sri Rama achieves what we consider impossible. Sage Valmiki, who wrote the Ramayana, presented Sri Ramchandra in all his perfection because society is always in need for an ideal. It is a fact that when people have a higher goal in their lives, they strive hard to improve and bring out the best in themselves. But if one's ideal is low, or if one has no higher goal to aspire for, one only drifts along in life and gets carried away by whatever whims and fancies come to one's mind or whatever temptation comes from society around him. There are some people who think that Sri Ram was not an actual living person and that the Ramayana is therefore an imaginary story to teach us good lessons of life. Why do we think in this way? Perhaps because we are rarely able to live up to even the simplest noble principle in our life, and we conclude therefore that as perfect a life of his is not possible. But such a view is false. The Lord did incarnate as Sri Ram. In fact, he lives even now in our hearts. The Ramayana is not just a fictitious story or novel, it is a true history. If it were merely a novel, it would never have gained such respect and he be worshipped till present times. Dharmashastra. Sri Ram was not only an ideal man, it is said that he was an incarnation of the Lord Himself. He came to earth and took a human form for our sake, so as to teach us how to live our lives beautifully. Because Sri Ram was the embodiment of Dharma and righteousness. The Ramayana is also considered to be a Dharma Shastra, as its method of teaching is different from the Shruti and Smriti, which teach us how to live by way of commandments or injunctions. Prabhu Vakya. They state directly what one ought to do and what one ought not to do, what is right and what is wrong. But there is another way of teaching by giving us friendly advice, Mitra Vakya, as to what to do and what to avoid. As a Dharma Shastra, the Ramayana teaches us through friendly advice, Mitra Vakya. Most of us do not listen to commandments or advice. We need demonstrations in practical life. And our question always is, has there ever been a person who has lived such values as are commanded? We want to see a perfect person, not living in the Himalayas somewhere, but right here before us, faced with all the ups and downs of life. Sri Rama was such a man of perfection. When we suffer in life, we usually complain and ask, why me? But Sri Ram, who was exiled to the forest for 14 years, for no faults fault of his, never complained, even though we find him weeping at times for his father, for Sita, for Lakshman, or for Bharat. If we look closely at his life, we see that what he loved most of all was Dharma. For Dharma's sake, he was ready to give up everything, as he himself said in a famous verse. As a king, the people, Dharma, are my altar of worship, and for their sake, I will renounce whatever is demanded of me, my personal happiness, or even my beloved wife Sita. Even Maricha, a friend of Ravan, acknowledged Sri Ram as the embodiment of Dharma. If one's own enemy gives such a compliment, you know there must be certainly be truth in it. If we cannot accept that such a person as Sri Ram existed, it is to our loss. If we think it is possible for Sri Ram to live such a perfect life, as he is God incarnate but not ourselves, this is due to weakness of our mind. Then the very purpose of the Ramayana is defeated. For Sri Ram incarnated for the sole purpose of guiding and helping people like us to live as he did. This, in fact, is the speciality of the Ramayana. He demonstrates what is right conduct and how the higher values can be lived. In India, the Ramayana is so popular that everyone knows of it, and many who are even illiterate know it by heart. Once an old villager was reading the Ramayana at the railway station whilst waiting for the train to arrive. A young man with his wife was standing nearby and said to the old man, only the old and old fashioned people read Ramayana all the time. Do you not have any other book to read? There are so many bestsellers available. What is so great in the Ramayana anyway? The old man did not reply and continued to read. This really annoyed him and he began to criticize the old man even more. Soon, however, the train arrived and everyone rushed in to get a seat, as one must do in India. The train started, and it turned out that the old man and the young man were seated next to each other. Suddenly, the old young man realized that his wife has got left behind on the platform. The old man said to him calmly, if you had read Ramayana, you would never have committed that mistake. It is said in the Ramayana that when Sri Ram, Sita, and Lakshman were standing on the bank of the Ganga, and a boatman came with the boat, Sri Ram asked Sita to get into the boat first. You do not have even know how to take care of your wife, and you ask me what is in Ramayana. You see, the Ramayana tells you even this. See that the wife gets in first. Truly enough, any time you are confused and cannot decide what your duty is, just read the Ramayana and you will find the answer to all your doubts. Solving life's conflicts. If you study the Ramayana carefully, we will discover that not only are day-to-day duties demonstrated, although demonstrated through Sri Ram's life, but we are also taught how to deal with the greater conflicts in life, although the exact circumstances may be somewhat different. For example, one day Sri Ram is told that he will be crowned the king, and the very next morning he is told that he is exiled to the forest for 14 years. The whole population of Ayodhya, as well as King Dashrath, begged him to stay back and gave many reasons for not going. Sri Ram left for the forest, knowing it was his dharma to fulfill the boon his father has promised to Kaikeyi. This was a big decision to make, one which he made without showing any disappointment or bitterness. On the other hand, Bharata's situation was more difficult. When he was told he would become king in Sri Ram's place, Bharata wondered what he should do. Sri Ram himself tells Bharata that he should fulfill the wishes of their father and become the king in accordance with the second boon of Kaikeyi. But Bharat said no. How did he arrive at this conclusion? You see, in the law there is both the letter and the spirit. Which is more important? Naturally, the spirit or intention is more important than the letter or literal meaning. Bharata knows that all the coronation arrangements had really been made for Sri Ram. Their father, King Dashrath, had really decided to make Sri Ram the king. But he had been unfortunately cornered by Kaikeyi. So Bharata asked himself, is it my dharma to fulfill my father's words, which were forced out of him, or his deep wishes? Realizing that his dharma was to fulfill his father's wishes, he did not accept to be the king. These are the subtle ways by which we determine our dharma. It is often difficult for the people to determine dharma. The importance of the Ramayana, therefore, is that it teaches us how to observe situations and come to the right decision. Symbolism of the characters. There is also a symbolic meaning in the story of the Ramayana. A line from a beautiful song based on the Adhyatma Ramayana by Sadashiv Brahmendra gives us a spiritual meaning of Ramayana. He who is sporting in my heart is Rama. Here, Rama means to sport, to revel. In another poem, it is said, he who revels in the heart of all beings is Rama. Another meaning of the name Rama is given in the Ramayana itself. Rama is that Satchidananda existence consciousness bliss, Brahman, in which all yogis ever revel. Rama is also he who delights everyone. What is that which delights everyone? If you ask a child, he may say Nintendo. Another person may say Coke or money. But what actually delights everyone is joy, Ananda. It is not the toy, game, house, or money, but the joy that we derive from them. Therefore, Sant Tulsidas says, though that ocean of bliss, a small droplet of which all the beings of all worlds take delight in and depend upon for their happiness, that is Ramachandra. Rama is Ananda Swarupa, the essence of joy, the Satchit Ananda playing in our heart. Therefore, Rama, about whom we read in the Ramayana, is actually our own true spiritual nature. And who is Sita, to whom Ram is married? She is the absolute peace, Shanti, Videha Sutasaha Charini, wedded to our blissful nature, Ananda Swarup, and the Ayodhya in which bliss and peace dwell together is the space in the heart. In the story of the Ramayana, Sri Ramachandra had to cross the ocean to kill Ravan and Kumbhakarna. This ocean is the great ocean of ignorance and delusion that we must cross in order to destroy the enemies within us. the likes and dislikes, and the desire and anger. Only when these hosts of negative tendencies in our hearts are removed can we attain absolute peace. Ram is also said to symbolize knowledge, jnana, and Sita, devotion, bhakti. Ravan, who is the embodiment of ignorance and delusion, ego and pride, can only be destroyed by Rama, who is pure knowledge. Lakshman is the incarnation of dispassion, Bharata the embodiment of love for God, and Shatrughna the embodiment of egoless service. What about Hanuman? Hanuman is very difficult to talk about because he is the embodiment of all the great divine qualities put together: devotion, service, dispassion, strength, humility, knowledge, and every other virtue. The other monkeys in Rama's army represent our numerous thoughts, some of which are not always directed towards the Lord alone. They also represent different kinds of spiritual disciplines, such as japa, austerity, or charity. We sometimes do them not for spiritual purposes but material gains. This should not be the case, for all our spiritual endeavors should be dedicated to the Lord alone and not for any other reason, such as fame, wealth, or power. This is why it is said in a prayer, whatever I do, I dedicate to Lord Narayan. If we can do this, we gain the real Ramarajya, the kingdom of happiness, peace, and prosperity. The Ramayana is a poem, a story, an epic, but above all, it is a scripture, Dharma Shastra, which demonstrates righteous living. Many kinds of secular knowledges are also found in the Ramayana, like economics, science of warfare, effective time management, and motivation theories. But of greatest importance is the highest spiritual knowledge, Brahma Vidya or Atma Vidya. The epic is therefore also called Adhyatma Shastra, a scripture that reveals the knowledge of the self. Thus, we cannot really say that the Ramayana is ancient and irrelevant. People in India were glued to their television sets when Ramayana was telecast as a serial. The charm of Ramayana will never fade. Since its knowledge is relevant for all times, it will always remain new. Chapter 17, the Mahabharata. Bhagavan Vedvyas compiled all the Vedas and taught them to his disciples, who in turn propagated these teachings to others. Vedvyas found, however, that many people were unable to correctly discern the content of the Vedas, and he therefore asked his disciple Jaimini Muni to elaborate on the Karma Kanda of the Vedas. This work came to be known as the Karma Mimamsa or Dharma Mimamsa, the exposition of Dharma. Vedvyas himself composed the Brahma Sutras to explain further the subject matter of the Upanishads for the Jnana Kanda or the Jnana Kanda of the Vedas. Vyasa found that many people were still not able to understand the Vedas and even the Brahma Sutras. They would not have enough patience, peace of mind, eagerness, or willingness even to study them in the future. He therefore thought that this knowledge should be brought out in a different form for the masses. Thus, Vedvyas composed the Mahabharata as itihas for people of all ages, all classes, educated or uneducated. This would enable them to grasp even the subtle theme of the Vedas. Authorship. There are different opinions concerning the authorship of the Mahabharata. One question raised is whether Vedvyas was one person or whether the name refers to more than one author. Another doubt raised is whether the entire 1 lakh verses of the Mahabharata were written in one time period or whether there were later additions by other writers. Some scholars opine that Vedvyasa wrote only the first 40,000 verses and this book was named Jaya. Afterwards, other writers added more verses and stories and it became known as Bharata. Later, still more additions were made until the composition became the Mahabharata as we know it today. As far as we are concerned, however, though these varying views exist, we believe that Vedvyas was one person and that he alone composed the entire Mahabharata consisting of 1 lakh verses. It is the world's largest epic in existence and an encyclopedia of knowledge. A popular and very interesting story of how the Mahabharata came to be written is contained in the epic itself. Although most readers miss the main point of the story. It is said that when Vedvyas conceived the Mahabharata in his mind, he knew that it would be a very large work and that he would need a stenographer to take dictation. As Vedvyas was thus contemplating, Lord Brahma appeared and told him to invoke Lord Ganesha, the deity of knowledge, who would assist Vyasa. He invoked Lord Ganesha and when he appeared, Vedvyasa requested him to take dictation. Lord Ganesha said, I am willing, but on one condition. Once I start writing, you should not stop dictating to me. In other words, the dictation had to go on non-stop. We know how difficult this is. Nowadays, when a boss dictates even one letter to his secretary, he has to stop again and again and say, wait, read it back to me. What did I say so far? Vedvyasa thought this would be very difficult, but he did not want to lose his service, so he said to Lord Ganesh, alright, I also have a condition. You should not write anything without grasping the full significance of what I say. This highlights the seriousness, the depth, the preciousness, and the great value of the subject matter of the Mahabharata. As the story goes, Lord Ganesha and Vedvyas agreed to each other's conditions and the dictation began. Now and then, however, Vedvyas needed more time to think and compose more verses. So it is said that in those moments he would dictate such a difficult verse that even Lord Ganesh had to stop to scratch his head and think deeply. In that intervening period, Vedvyas was able to compose his next verses. We do not know which verses Lord Ganesha could not immediately understand, but it is said that said there are at least 500 to 600 verses, the meaning of which are known only to Vedvyas and Lord Ganesh. A verse describing a river or mountain may have a far deeper meaning. Therefore, the idea is that every verse must be thought over very deeply and carefully. This is the significance of this story. The Mahabharata contains every branch of knowledge, including science, arts, commerce, economics, politics, warfare, social science, history, mythology, Dharma Shastra, and also Adhyatma Shastra, the spiritual science or self knowledge. It is in the Mahabharata that we find the famous Bhagavad Gita. If anyone asks what is in the Mahabharata, we can answer what is not in it. Vedvyas himself said, what is in the Mahabharata is also in the world, and what is not in the Mahabharata is not in the world. We may think this is an exaggeration, an egoistical statement, but it is not so. If we read this great epic carefully, we will understand that this claim is true. It is also said that this entire knowledge of the world is what is left over by Vedvyasa. Vyasochistam, Vyasochistam Jagat Sarvam. Uchishtam means leftover, as where we taste everything on our plate and leave the remaining portions. What is meant here is that Vedvyas has tasted or explained every branch of knowledge in the Mahabharata in its seed form, and consequently, whoever writes or on any possible subject is really borrowing from the Mahabharata either directly or indirectly. The central theme. It is an interesting fact that the number 18 constantly recurs in association with this great epic. The 1 lakh verses of the Mahabharata are divided into 18 cantos called Parvas. The Mahabharata war, which took place between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, lasted for 18 days, and there were a total of 18 battalions in both the armies. The Bhagavad Gita, placed in the middle of the Mahabharata, is divided into 18 chapters, and also the Puranas that Vedvyas wrote are 18 in number. What is the significance of this number? According to Hindu tradition, the number 18 stands for victory. That is why the Mahabharata was earlier called Jaya, which means victory. This number indicates the very theme of the Mahabharata. Although essentially the main theme of the Mahabharata is the knowledge of the Vedas, it also represents the victory over evil or the lower self. The higher self is the divinity that shines in our hearts. The lower self consists of devilish tendencies and evil thoughts. To help us completely conquer and vanquish these evil thoughts of the mind is the purpose of the Mahabharata. It represents the victory of truth and dharma over adharma. In the Mahabharata, various characters are repeatedly make the statement that the Pandavas will certainly win the war. Why is this so? Because as it is said, where there is dharma, there is also victory. Bhagavan Shri Krishna told the Pandavas repeatedly that he was supporting them not because they were his relatives or that he had any special love for them, but because they were following the path of dharma. Where dharma is, there the Lord also is, and where the Lord is, there surely is victory. That is why it is said in the last verse of the Gita, 18.78. Wherever Arjun with his bow and arrow ready to put forth righteous efforts is accompanied by Sri Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, there is victory and prosperity, divinity and nobility. Therefore, the lesson taught to us is this: if we want to have true abiding victory, not just a temporary one, we must keep the Lord on our side. and to have him on our side, we must follow Dharma. By conquering our negative tendencies, we gain real victory, wherein the enemy is defeated and complete and everlasting prosperity is achieved. The depiction of the Mahabharat war in the outside world is also a reflection of the war within each time of us. There are people who say that the Mahabharat war did not actually take place, that it is only a symbolic story of the inner war. But if people are having a war in their own minds, do you think it will never be expressed outside? We see it happening every day. Even when a husband and wife have differences of opinion, do they not fight? We cannot say that is only on the inside. For whatever is inside as will also be expressed outside in the family, the society, and the world. Dharma wins. The story of the Kauravas and Pandavas is the struggle between the evil and the good, and the ultimate victory of the good, of those who abide in adharma. It is strange that we sometimes hear people say there is no use of being honest, righteous, or ethical. They say, I tried being honest for a while, but got no results, so I have given up. But honesty is not a short term course after which you are awarded a certificate. The scriptures say the lions in the forest kill and eat other animals. That is their dharma, and no matter how hungry they are, they will not eat grass. You see, even the lions do not compromise on their dharma. In the same way, the great saints refuse to do other than what is righteous dharma, even if it means great suffering or a threat to their life. Similarly, only when we become uncompromising in our dharma, like the saints, will we win real victory. It is the following of dharma that made the Pandavas great, even though each of them had their own weaknesses. They would admit their faults and willingly suffer the consequences, but not waver from the path of dharma. There are some people who say that good values such as honesty and non injury will not work in the present age of competition and politics, corruption, and unequal distribution of wealth. It is really true that dishonesty wins and honesty loses. Is it really true that dishonesty wins and honesty loses? It is interesting to know that even in the victory of the dishonest, honesty alone wins. Among gangsters, for instance, there is a lot of loyalty and honesty. They are also very disciplined within their own groups, for if anyone wavers in his loyalty, they are removed from this world. So you see, even the evil forces gain their strength and victories due to these higher values that operate within them. The evil succeed because of their unity. On the other hand, the so called good people are not able to unite because each one wants to show off how wonderful he or she is. Therefore, their negative quality of boastfulness or adharma makes them lose. I read an article recently in which someone explained this fact very well. The writer said that if there is a fight between evil and truly good, good will win. Generally, what we see are conflicts only between evil and lesser evil. Yet we call that lesser evil good. I accuse another person by saying he swindled millions of dollars, but I only took $1,000. This does not make me a good person. I am just a person who did less harm. Once I met a man who told me, Swamiji, the whole society is corrupt. Everybody else is accepting bribes, but I have never accepted a bribe in my life. I said, then you are really a wonderful person. How could you resist the temptation? He said, because no one offered it to me. When a person remains incorrupt just because no one has tried to bribe or tempt him, we cannot really say that he is an honest person. When we see the so called good losing against evil, it is only because the good are not good enough. They lack total integrity and their goodness is not incorruptible. There are also those who earn money by foul means and who say that honesty does not work. Yet they expect their own treasurer or accountant to be very honest and their friends and servants to be very loyal. So again, Shakuntala, Yayati and Devayani, each of these stories is the conflict between the 100 evil-minded Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula and Sahadeva. The Kauravas represent the forces of unrighteousness and negative tendencies, while the Pandavas represent the forces of righteousness and noble thoughts. This conflict between good and evil has been going on in individual minds and in the world outside since time immemorial. It sometimes seems to us that evil wins more often than good. There are occasions when our divine and noble thoughts win, but then again the good in us does not win a permanent victory, and we again give in to our lower tendencies. Why is this so? It is said that if the good forces fight the battle against evil on their own strength, these ups and downs, victory and defeat, will always continue. But if the good take the support of the Lord, the victory of the good is permanent. This is why the Pandavas sought the help of Lord Shri Krishna, the higher spiritual principle or truth. So, what is the implication of this in our own personal lives? If I practice honesty, promptness, and good service only for the good name, it will bring me only for the good name it will bring me, and my business will run well, and I will succeed financially. The goodness may not be lasting. For some, it may last only until they discover that they can attain the same goals by dishonesty and hypocrisy. Students are losing faith in and respect for the educational system because today education serves only to obtain a good job and to earn money and not more. It does not ensure happiness and peace of mind. When the good qualities are practiced for the sake of the Lord and spiritual enlightenment, then we will have the support of truth and we will gain complete and permanent victory over the mind. How otherwise, the good in us may not last and may not give us fulfillment. The greatness of the Pandavas. In the Mahabharata, we find many different characters who are considered great and noble, yet who act at times in strange manners that cannot be justified. The Mahabharata presents the human struggle in its true form, with all its strengths and weaknesses. Vedas portrays human life as it is, without trying to hide the ugliness. There are many great men and women in the epic who also have their failings. When Vedavyas brings out the greatness of their character, he does not hide any of their weaknesses. But the fact that they have faults does not mean that their greatness is lost. What makes them great is that they admit their faults and try to overcome them and are ready to suffer the consequences of their wrong actions. In the Bhagavad Puran also too, we find that King Parikshita one day after hunting, being tired, hungry and thirsty, he puts a dead snake around the neck of a sage who is in meditation in a fit of anger. Thereafter he does not pray, O God, please forgive me. He says, I have done a truly bad action, O Lord, please punish me severely, such that I will never repeat this mistake. This was the greatness of King Parikshit. What we generally do, however, is to commit wrong actions and then say, O Lord, please forgive me. We see that Yudhishthir, the eldest of the Pandava brothers, had a weakness for gambling. He was often drawn into it with the Kauravas, not out of his own choice. However, the rules at that time were that if someone challenges you in a battle or a game, you cannot refuse the challenge. Once he started playing, however, he did cross the limit due to his own weakness for gambling. Yudhishthir recognized his fault. He realized that he would have to accept the consequences. For 12 years, he and his brothers had to live in exile in the forest, and 1 year incognito, even though they were capable of attacking the Kauravas. Even when Bhima and Arjun used to become impatient and say, why not fight them now? We are completely capable. Yudhishthir said, no, we have committed a mistake. We accepted their challenge and have lost it. Therefore, we must suffer. After our exile, we will ask for what is rightfully ours. And if they do not give the kingdom to us, then we can engage them in battle. The Pandavas were great because they lived the noble values, and whenever they did commit a mistake, they did not try to justify it but were ready to suffer the consequences. The Lord does not reject a person just because he has a weakness. What he respects most is a person's honesty and integrity. Because Bhagavan Sri Krishna saw these qualities in the Pandavas, he told them, I will support you fully. This is how the Pandavas were led to ultimate victory by the Lord. Chapter 18. The characters of the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, Vedavyas brings out human life in its true form and shows how men and women act and react to different experiences. He shows their greatness and their shallowness, meanness and divinity, and an entire array of human emotions. Now we will look at a few characters of the Mahabharata and compare their emotions and attitudes with those in our own lives. This Itihasa is not the history of a past age alone, it is the history of humanity as a whole. The lessons taught are completely relevant even today. Dhritarashtra. The name Dhritarashtra means he holds on to the nation, Dhruta holding on, Rashtra nation. Though Dhritarashtra was the eldest of three brothers and had the right to the throne of Hastinapur, law prohibited him from becoming king because he was born blind. When his younger brother Pandu was made the king, Dhritarashtra held a grudge against Pandu's family, the Pandavas, which continued for the rest of his life. Later, when Pandu died in the forest, Dhritarashtra was given the responsibility of overseeing the kingdom until Pandu's eldest son Yudhishthir was old enough to become the king. However, although Dhritarashtra knew that Yudhishthir was the right heir to the throne, not only according to law, but also because he was the best qualified of all the royal children. Dhritarashtra was unable to give up his own craving for the throne. He tried, therefore, to fulfill his desire through his own eldest son, Duryodhana. Duryodhana was of a mean and wicked nature, yet Dhritarashtra was extremely attached to him. We see again and again the unsteadiness of Dhritarashtra's mind. On the one hand, he knows what is right and just, and even though he wants to do the right thing, his own ambition and attachment to the kingdom and to his son makes him lose objectivity. Thus, he becomes susceptible to the pressures put on him by Duryodhan and others to act improperly. Ultimately, he yields to their wishes. We see this happen, for instance, when Dhritarashtra's youngest brother Vidura comes to advise him. The wise Vidura advises Dhritarashtra to give back to the Pandavas what is rightfully theirs, and Dhritarashtra thinks, yes, that is the right thing to do, and I should follow his advice. But then another wicked minister named Shakuni, who is on Duryodhana's side, comes and gives him the opposite advice. These Pandavas are your enemies, and all enemies should be finished off completely. So Dhritarashtra changes his mind and starts thinking in that way again. Is not our nature also like this? When we have ambitions that we cannot fulfill ourselves, we want to fulfill them through someone else. When we are attached to someone or crave for something, we become blind to justice. If we happen to be blessed with the company of wise and holy people, our mind starts working in the right direction at that time, and we think, oh yes, this is the way I want to live. But as soon as we are in bad company again, our minds goes back into wrong channels of thinking, and ultimately our strongest emotions take over. Dhritarashtra was the only one who could have stopped the war, but because of his weakness, he did not. Instead, he tried to shirk the responsibility for his action by evoking pity from others on account of his blindness. This is exactly what we do. Reasons for losing the war. In the Mahabharat war, the Kaurava army was much larger than that of the Pandavas, and there were many great warriors on Duryodhana's side, such as Bhishma Pitamaha, Dronacharya, and Krupacharya. Yet the Kauravas were defeated. Why did they lose the war? The main reason was that the Pandavas fought on the side of Dharma and therefore had the help of the Lord, while the Kauravas fought on the side of Adharma and did not have the Lord's help. There are other reasons as well. Another factor that caused the Kauravas' loss was that almost all the great leaders and armies who fought on their side really did so only for the sake of Bhishma and Dronacharya, not out of loyalty to Duryodhan or his cause. Yet Bhishma and Dronacharya themselves were torn in their loyalties within. Their love and blessings were with the Pandavas, and only their bodies were with the Kauravas. Now, can a war ever be fought in this way? No matter how courageous and great the commanders of an army may be, if they do not have the conviction that what they are fighting for is right, there will be no strength behind their efforts. Bhishma Pitamaha, Dronacharya, and many other commanders and their warriors knew that the Kauravas stood for unrighteousness, and so their sympathies were really with the Pandavas. When such a split between body and mind exists, no one will be able to fight well. Attachment to personal vows. The question may arise in our mind as to why Bhishmacharya and Dronacharya sided with the Kauravas even though they knew it was the side of adharma. This demonstrates how helpless even great people become under the forces of their own wrong motions. And when they make a mistake, even the best have to pay for it. Bhishmacharya, the grandsire of the Pandavas and Kaurava children, is a good example of this. Many times, when self sacrifice, yet the mistake he made was nation. The point is that we should know when to follow a vow according to word and when to fulfill it. Or when an individual is more concerned with himself than with the welfare of the whole, the very purpose for which the vow is taken is defeated. In short, the reasons for the Kauravas' downfall were commanders and warriors did not have complete loyalty to the cause, and their loyalty to the side of adharma was due to wrong notions concerning their individual honor. Advice of Lord Krishna. The Pandavas and other leaders on their side also had this habit of taking vows, which later got them into trouble. Fortunately, however, they always had Lord Krishna with them to interpret the vows in the proper way. For example, Arjun once vowed that he would kill anyone who insulted him, his valor, or his Gandiv bow. It so happened that one day on the battlefield, Yudhishthir was angry at Arjun and cursed in frustration, "Fie on your Gandiv bow." Arjun cried, "What did you say?" And immediately pulled out his bow to kill Yudhishthir. It would have been terrible if Arjun had killed his own elder brother. Lord Krishna intervened and told him, "Arjun, do not be foolish. Certainly you should fulfill this vow if you have taken it. But it is not also said that one's father or brother can be killed by means other than physical destruction. If one dishonors, insults, or abuses them verbally, it is as good as killing them. So you can kill Yudhishthir with words, not arrows." Arjun then scolded Yudhishthir severely. Afterwards, Sri Krishna also told Arjun to do namaskar prostration to his brother for having scolded his elder brother. Luckily, the Pandavas listened to the Lord when he advised them. If they had held on to their own vows, their very purpose for fighting the war would have been defeated. Lord Krishna himself shows how a vow should be fulfilled in a way beneficial to all. He had told Arjun earlier, "I will advise you during the war, but I will not take up a weapon in my hand." When Bhishma heard this, he thought, I am going to make him take up a weapon. Bhishma fought such a terrible battle with Arjun that if Sri Krishna had not stepped in, Arjun and the whole Pandava army would have been destroyed. Realizing this threat, Sri Krishna took up a chariot wheel in his hand and rushed towards Bhishma. Arjun cried, Bhagwan, stop! You vowed you would not take up a weapon. But Krishna told him, I know what I am doing. Bhishma dropped his weapons and said, O Lord, please kill me. For a death at your hands would be a great blessing. When Sri Krishna saw that Bhishma had laid down his weapons, he too immediately dropped the wheel without killing Bhishma. Therefore, the important question to consider always is, do I regard my own individual honor and glory so greater, or is the cause of dharma and the nation's glory greater? Is following dharma in the larger sense more important, or following of my individual dharma alone more important? Dronacharya. Dronacharya was also a great person, but he too was not free from faults. Since he was born as a Brahman, there was no need for, nor was it his duty to learn archery and warfare. Yet, due to such a desire as a young boy, Dronacharya went to a Gurukul to be instructed in these arts. There he became friendly with Drupada, who was the prince of a nearby kingdom. Drupada promised that when he would become king, Dronacharya could come to him for anything he needed. Years later, when Dronacharya went to Drupada for help, he pretended not to know him. Dronacharya felt terribly humiliated and angry and vowed to take revenge. Incapable of taking revenge by himself, Drona wanted to fulfill his desire through others. He went to Hastinapur and there became the archery instructor for the Kauravas and Pandavas. When their training was over and it came time for them to give Guru Dakshina gift to the teacher, Drona thought to himself, Ah, now is my chance. He told them to capture Drupada and bring him there. Drupada was captured and brought into Dronacharya's presence. Thus humiliated, he was left to return to his kingdom. However, Drupada then felt so insulted and enraged that he swore that he would produce a son who could kill Dronacharya. Thus, the cycle of revenge continued. We see that even though Dronacharya was serving in the Kaurava palace, he was doing so only with his own personal ambition in mind. Also, his reactions of anger and vengeance were just the opposite qualities of what a Brahman should have. Furthermore, he degraded himself by becoming a hired tutor for the royal children. This is why we are warned in the Mahabharata that man is the slave of money, but money is not the slave of anyone. When some people read the Mahabharata, they wonder why all these debatable characters are portrayed. It shows that we should not glorify and follow the example of those with negative qualities. We are simply being shown through the characters all possible patterns of human behavior, responses, thoughts, and attitudes so that we can learn from these examples what is right and wrong, which kind of behavior leads to happiness and which does not. The cause for the Kauravas' defeat lay in the fact that even though the great leaders knew in their hearts what was right, They could not rise above their own individual weaknesses, attachments, and ambitions. However, we should note that even with these drawbacks, their greatness was not overshadowed. When Dronacharya, for instance, heard that his son Ashwatthama had died in battle, Dronacharya sat down in meditation and gave up his body at will. This shows the power of the spiritual practice he had done in the past, that he could meditate at will in the midst of a battlefield. Immediately after hearing that his son, that his one and only favorite son, was dead, is indeed great. Unfortunately, during his lifetime, this greatness was not fully seen due to his other weaknesses. Kunti. Queen Kunti, the mother of the Pandavas, was a great devotee of the Lord. All her children were born of celestial deities as the result of a mantra she chanted to invoke them. However, because her eldest son Karna was born before her marriage, she cast him away. He was found and raised by a Shudra family. Although she was a great person, Kunti's one fault was that she could never gather the courage to admit to anyone, and even to Karna, that he was her son, her own son. As a result, a deep rivalry developed between Karna and Arjun right from their youth. Dronacharya loved Arjun very much, and he refused to teach Karna, since he was not considered to be of royal parentage. This feeling of rivalry, which turned to hatred between Karna and Arjun, was mutual. We see in the next class further.